Grief is one of the most powerful and transformative experiences we will face in our lives. It touches every one of us, whether through the loss of a beloved person, a fading dream that once held all our hopes, or the closing of a chapter that seemed like it would last forever. Grief can lay us bare, leaving us disoriented, overwhelmed, and feeling profoundly alone. But what if there was another way to face it? What if, instead of letting sorrow consume us, we could navigate our way through grief, emerging stronger, wiser, and more resilient? This is where the wisdom of Stoicism comes in, a philosophy that has stood the test of time, offering practical guidance for life's most challenging and darkest moments. The ancient philosophy of Stoicism, led by the teachings of great minds like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, provides powerful, life-changing tools for coping with grief. It doesn't suggest that we ignore or suppress our emotions. Instead, it teaches us to embrace what life brings, to focus on what we can control, and to find strength even amidst chaos. By learning to shift our perspective, we can discover that grief is not just a source of pain but also a gateway to profound transformation. Stoicism teaches us to live with intention, to see grief as an integral part of the human experience, an opportunity for growth rather than a burden to carry. In this exploration, we'll uncover Stoic strategies for dealing with grief, strategies that can help us not only endure but also thrive. We will dive into powerful concepts like acceptance, focusing on what lies within our control, negative visualization, and maintaining perspective, interwoven with real-life stories that bring these teachings to life. By the end, you'll have a practical set of Stoic principles to help you navigate grief, discovering resilience and renewed purpose. Chapter 1: Finding Strength in Acceptance. Grief is inevitable, it is woven into the fabric of our human journey. From the moment we take our first breath, we are destined to experience loss. Every relationship, every dream, every cherished moment is impermanent, subject to the inexorable flow of time. And when we do lose what we value, the pain can feel unbearable. The first impulse is often to resist, to deny, to fight against the unfairness of it all. But Stoicism offers us an alternative, a path of resilience, acceptance, and ultimately, growth. One of the key tenets of Stoicism is that while we cannot control what happens to us, we can always control our response. Epictetus, who was once a slave and rose to become one of the most influential Stoic teachers, famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When we lose someone dear or face a shattered dream, these words remind us that our real power lies not in altering the past, but in choosing our mindset as we move forward. Take Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who knew loss all too well. He faced the deaths of many close to him, including his beloved wife, yet he continued to lead with compassion and strength. Stoic principles guided him, he allowed himself to feel grief, but he did not allow it to control his life. Marcus understood that grief is an emotion to be honored, not suppressed. It's an acknowledgement of love lost and the inevitable impermanence of life. For Marcus, acceptance wasn't about defeat, it was about making peace with the reality of the moment and finding a way to act, even amidst pain. Acceptance is at the core of the Stoic approach to grief. By accepting what cannot be changed, we release ourselves from the futile struggle against reality. Instead of seeing grief as a destructive force, Stoicism teaches us to see it as an opportunity for growth, to reshape our lives with new meaning. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Our life is what our thoughts make it." These words are a profound reminder that, while pain is inevitable, suffering is shaped by our perspective. How we interpret grief, how we integrate it into our story, that is within our power. Chapter 2: The Power of Choice, Focusing on what we can control. One of the central tenets of Stoicism is learning to discern what lies within our control and what does not. In grief, this distinction can be our lifeline. The loss itself, whether it's a loved one, a job, or a dream, is beyond our influence. But how we choose to respond, the thoughts we cultivate, the actions we take, those are always within our grasp. Seneca, another prominent Stoic philosopher, experienced deep personal losses, including the deaths of his son and his father-in-law. He taught that while grief is natural, we should not allow it to consume our lives entirely. He wrote, "Grief is a natural response to loss, but it should not be allowed to take over our lives." Seneca's approach wasn't about denying pain, but about not letting it become our master. By focusing on what he could control, his thoughts, actions, and relationships, he was able to navigate his grief without losing himself to despair. Imagine a woman named Emma, who loses her job unexpectedly. Initially, she feels devastated. Her career was her identity, her security, her passion. She allows herself to grieve this loss, but eventually, she realizes there are things she can still control. Emma begins learning new skills, volunteering, and ultimately starts her own consulting service. By focusing on what lay within her power, Emma transformed her grief into a new chapter of opportunity. This is what Stoicism teaches us, that even in the face of loss, we can find ways to grow by focusing on what is within our control. Chapter 3, Shifting Perspectives to Overcome Grief. Grief often narrows our perspective, making it difficult to see beyond the immediate pain. The Stoics understood this well, and they urged us to zoom out, to view our suffering as part of a much larger picture. This shift in perspective can be a powerful tool for easing the burden of grief, helping us see that change, including loss, is a fundamental aspect of the universe. Epictetus said, "It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things." When we experience grief, it's not just the loss itself that hurts, but also our perception of it, our fear, our regrets, our sense of helplessness. By challenging these judgments, we can begin to soften the sharp edges of our suffering. Consider John, who lost his father to illness. At first, his grief was all-consuming, a dark fog that made it impossible to see anything else. But over time, John found solace in hiking through nature. The changing seasons reminded him that everything in life is cyclical: growth, decay, and renewal. Nature became his teacher, showing him that loss is not an end but a transformation. By changing his perspective, John began to see his grief as part of the natural flow of life, which allowed him to start healing. Chapter 4, The Art of Negative Visualization. One of the most profound Stoic practices is negative visualization, the act of imagining the loss of people and things we hold dear. This might seem morbid or counterintuitive, but its purpose is not to dwell in negativity. Rather, it helps us prepare emotionally for life's inevitable losses and, more importantly, teaches us to cherish what we have in the present. Seneca believed that by contemplating potential loss, we become more appreciative of what we have. Negative visualization helps us develop a deep sense of gratitude and resilience. It doesn't eliminate the pain of loss, but it can reduce its shock and help us navigate through it with greater emotional stability. Take Sarah, for instance. Each morning, she practiced negative visualization by acknowledging the fragility of her life and the lives of her loved ones. She didn't do this to dwell in fear, but to remind herself to be fully present, to cherish each moment as if it were the last. When Sarah lost her mother unexpectedly, she found herself more prepared emotionally. Of course, the grief was still intense, but she realized that her practice had allowed her to appreciate her mother while she was alive and had helped her come to terms with the reality of her loss more gracefully. Chapter 5, Building Resilience Through Real Stories. Stories have the power to inspire us, and there are countless examples of people who have drawn on Stoic teachings to overcome profound grief. Let me share the story of Sam, a man who lost his partner in a tragic accident. At first, Sam felt entirely lost, overwhelmed by the emptiness left behind. He turned to the writings of Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus for solace, and slowly, he began to find his footing. The Stoic emphasis on focusing on what he could control, his actions, his attitude, his contribution to others, became a guiding light. Sam decided to honor his partner's memory by doing something meaningful. He started volunteering at a community center, helping others who were struggling with their own losses. Through this work, Sam found a renewed sense of purpose. The grief didn't disappear, but it became a part of his story, a reason to connect with others and make a difference. Sam's journey teaches us that grief doesn't have to be an endpoint, it can be a turning point, a catalyst for transformation. Chapter 6, Integrating Stoic Practices for Lasting Transformation. The Stoic approach to grief is about embracing pain as part of our human experience. Acceptance, maintaining perspective, focusing on what we can control, and practicing gratitude, these principles work together to help us find strength and peace. The key is integration, using these tools harmoniously to foster resilience. Consider James, who, after losing his job, felt a deep sense of failure and fear. He chose to use Stoic practices to find his way through this challenging time. He accepted what he could not change, shifted his focus to actions within his control, maintained perspective by remembering that this was just one chapter in his life, and drew daily inspiration from Stoic teachings. James found that this approach not only helped him cope with his immediate loss but led him to a new career path that was ultimately more fulfilling and aligned with his values. Chapter 7, Gratitude Amidst Adversity. Gratitude is a powerful Stoic practice, especially during times of loss. It may feel counterintuitive to be grateful when we are grieving, but gratitude helps shift our focus from what we have lost to what we still have. It grounds us in the present and gives us the strength to carry on. For instance, imagine someone who has lost a loved one. While the pain of loss is undeniable, they can still choose to reflect on the memories they shared, the lessons they learned, and the love they experienced. Gratitude doesn't eliminate grief, but it allows us to find moments of light even in the darkest times. It reminds us that there is still beauty and value in our lives, even after a profound loss. Chapter 8, The Role of Self-Compassion. In times of grief, it is easy to be hard on ourselves, to feel like we should be coping better, moving on faster, or not feeling as deeply as we do. Stoicism teaches us to be resilient, but it also encourages self-compassion. Being Stoic is not about being emotionless, it's about being understanding with ourselves as we navigate life's inevitable hardships. Self-compassion allows us to recognize our humanity, to accept that we are allowed to feel pain and that it is okay to struggle. It helps us treat ourselves with the same kindness that we would offer a friend going through a similar experience. By embracing self-compassion, we build the emotional resilience needed to heal and grow. Chapter 9, Turning Grief into Purpose. One of the most transformative aspects of Stoicism is its emphasis on turning adversity into purpose. When we face grief, it can feel as if our world has been shattered. But within that brokenness lies the potential for rebuilding, perhaps even creating something more meaningful. Consider someone like Maria, who lost her spouse after a long illness. In her grief, she felt an immense emptiness, but she chose to channel her pain into advocacy. She began volunteering for a hospice care organization, using her own experiences to support others going through similar situations. By turning her grief into action, Maria found a new sense of purpose. She transformed her loss into a gift for others, a way to honor her spouse's memory and make a positive impact in the world. Embracing Stoicism in times of loss. Grief is an inevitable teacher, albeit a harsh one. Stoicism does not promise to eliminate the pain of loss, but it offers a framework to navigate through it. By accepting what we cannot change, focusing on what we can control, maintaining a broader perspective, and practicing gratitude, negative visualization, and self-compassion, we can find a way not only to endure grief but to grow from it. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it." Loss and grief are an unavoidable part of living, but they do not have to define us. By applying the timeless wisdom of Stoicism, we can transform our sorrow into strength, our suffering into resilience, and our loss into a deeper appreciation for the beauty of the present moment. Let us face these inevitable challenges with courage, let us find growth in our pain, and let us live with a renewed sense of purpose and meaning.